Well, King Charles is in town. How exciting. We're excited, Rita, to have King Charles in town. Welcome to King Charles. Welcome to Camilla. Hope you're both well and watching Outsiders, which, of course, you are, Your Honour, Your Highness.
Oh, well, yes, I'm beside myself with excitement. Look, I'm not going to feign excitement. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a monarchist. I think it's a system that serves us well, so I'd rather we stay with it. The Republicans cannot come up with a model that is better than what we currently have. But that doesn't mean I'm out there waving British Union Jack flags or celebrating King Charles's presence in the country. But I do think that it is a poor look that we've got so many state premiers who are just not even making themselves available for a meeting with the King. This might be his only visit to Australia.
This is bizarre, James. Is this politics?
It's total politics. It's an incredibly poor taste. Remember, all of these state premiers, they are all officers, they're all ministers of the Crown, right? All of our ministers are ministers of the Crown. And for them to sort of artfully snub the sovereign in this way, I think is incredibly poor taste. I think it's playing to a left-wing base that, has a problem not just with the monarchy, but with tradition, but with the institutions of our democracy, and with, frankly, modern post-settlement Australia itself. I really think that you need to look at this as part of a much bigger program of the left attacking institutions. Now, Rita, I know you said just now that you're not a committed monarchist, you're not a committed Republican, you think that the system works. And yes, that is absolutely correct. But also, I do think that one of the great cases for being a monarchist in Australia is that institutional stability which we have, which does work. And, we've talked about for years. If you've been watching this program at home for years, you know that what we talk about here is the salami strategy, by which the left slices off. We should have, a leader here in Australia. Oh, we should do this. Dink, 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 dink. Yeah. And then before you know it, the whole joint's gone.
Well, more important, sorry, Reed, I'll just say that what you said before is 100% correct. So Winston Churchill famously said that democracy isn't great, but it's way better than all the alternatives. And exactly the same can be said for the constitutional monarchy. It ain't perfect, but it's way, way better than all the alternatives, as the Republicans have repeatedly failed to come up with anything that is even vaguely acceptable. And the key point, James, is that having a monarch, and particularly having a monarch who is overseas on the other side of the planet, means that he denies that power, he or she, the Queen before him, denies that power at the top of our structure to anybody else.
Well,
so you don't get Malcolm Turnbull sitting as the president. You don't get Kevin Rudd or anybody else sitting as the president. You get someone who is completely independent. But that is why the key to the success of the constitutional monarchy is that the monarch himself or herself must, at all costs and at all personal costs, remain above politics. And the biggest danger is that King Charles and his son, Prince William, keep flirting with woke ideology, unaware or maybe aware that it is socialist left-wing policy that they are flirting with, and that is the real danger that the monarchy has to come to grips with. They must stop being woke, James.
Well, the monarchy must be non-partisan completely. I mean, that's the whole point.
It must be, and that's the problem.
But I would argue that King Charles hasn't just flirted, but as Prince Charles, he was deeply political on multiple issues, from climate change to Middle East relations to all sorts of issues, and always sometimes on the fringes of the left. You look at some of the things he has said and written. So that I worry about. Prince William, sadly, is also following in those footsteps. He has been less political as king, thank God, but there's still this talk about investigating reparations and he's still there. He's still in that circle where he's getting advice from the very worst people he should be getting advice from.
The problem is, James, it was Prince Charles who was out there selling the Great Reset. Remember that nonsense from the World Economic Forum a few years ago about how we're going to rebuild all our lives and all this? So he's been an advocate for openly political cause.
But
now, yes, Rita is correct that as king he's done less of that, but he's still been there. He's still been doing the doomsday clock for climate change, all that stuff. He's very poorly advised by his advisors in the palace if he does this, because
because you know what? The only way that the monarchy maintains its support is by being over and above politics and not getting down into the nitty-gritty of this or that woke cause of the week. But I just want to bring it back to Australia here. You know, the key is the people who are pushing a republic here, they do not want there to be no sort of sovereign power. They just want it to be their own kind of local aristocracy of the sort of the Peter Fitzsimons types, the Malcolm Turnbull types. And, you know, we saw them coalesce and come together during The Voice. The Australian people rejected that vision, that sort of C-suite wokeness, you know, but they see themselves as kind of a new aristocracy, and they feel like they are terribly denied that because they're Australian and not British. And, you know, one of the things that I always find fascinating is for all of the, you know, supposed egalitarian talk of this class, how much they obsess over gongs and all sorts of things like that. You know, how often do they lose their mind when the wrong sort of person gets an AO? They think it's all for them. And
that's right.
That's what they want to. That's what they want here. They want to ditch the monarchy so that they can create their own woke aristocracy.
Well, back in 1999, when we had the Republic referendum, brilliant work by Professor David Flint and others who actually went up and fought against this. Everyone said it's all going to happen, it's all going to happen, there's definitely going to be a republic. And the moment for me when I realised that absolutely no way do we want a republic was when Malcolm Turnbull was asked who would be good to be the president of Australia? And Malcolm Turnbull said, well, I was at a dinner party last night in Balmain, and all the people there, you know, there was Rachel Ward and Brian Brown, they'd be good, or there was Thomas Keneally, he'd be good. So this is, you're right, they had their own aristocracy lined up, ready to go. And that is why it's so critical that we do not have a republic in this country. We keep the monarchy. But King Charles flirted again, Rita, with politics when the other day he said, I'm not going to use the term walkabout when I'm in Australia. Bad advice again, as James was saying, King Charles. Walkabout is a perfectly acceptable term. There's no reason, in fact, it's a great Aussie term, and there's no reason to bow to the wokeness of the elites who tell you, oh, no, that's racist or whatever. But James is right that they have the salami thing. All they're trying to do, James, is they failed with The Voice, but the plan was to follow The Voice with a Republican referendum that would have introduced a republic to Australia. They've ignored The Voice. They're carrying on as per usual, and they're ignoring the fact that Australians don't want a republic. They're just carrying on. That's why the premiers aren't turning up to meet the king, because they're already, as far as they're concerned, on their way to introducing a republic. It's a disgrace, and the Australian people have to stop these elitist politicians.
I can't see them introducing a referendum because they know it would fail.
And they don't bother, so they just don't turn up to meet the king. They just denigrate the king. They denigrate the monarchy.
They've ended, you know, Matt Thistlethwaite's position as the Assistant Minister for the Republic. That's gone. So we no longer have an Assistant Minister for the Republic. So that's the first thing just to think about on the mechanics of this. But, you know, again, all of these things, remember, there's a much broader program, and you always have to remember, they always introduce each one of these little things in very reasonable terms. Oh, but wouldn't it be nice to have this? Wouldn't it be nice to have that? But then, as a whole, you know, where this is also really important is that because there's such a press against, you know, things like free speech, things even like, you know, the real threat to democracy isn't from the right, it's from the left. We all know this here. You know, the real threat to treating people as individuals and not, you know, as a member of an identity group, all of that comes from the left. And once they if they were to successfully ditch our ties to the birthplace of modern democracy, Britain, you know, and our common law, then suddenly all of the institutions that make Australia and have made Australia, and God willing will continue to make Australia great, parliamentary democracy, everything else will suddenly be unmoored.
Absolutely. And what King Charles really should be doing, forget about climate change and walkabouts and all the rest of it, what King Charles really should be saying is, I am the heir to the Magna Carta. You have me in place to guarantee the freedom of every Australian citizen. That is why I am King Charles, and that is why I'm here, to guarantee the freedom of every one of my subjects, and that Parliament can never overreach itself. That is what the Magna Carta was all about. That is what the history of the British monarchy and the British Westminster parliamentary system that we were lucky enough to inherit is all about, and that is what King Charles should be saying. And by the way, if you do happen to see King Charles, say to him, thank you for coming walkabout to Australia, because he needs to hear it from Australians, Rita.
He does need to hear that, but I don't think we're going to get through that inner circle he has, which advises him to just embrace every woke cause and make sure he appeases the far left, who will never accept the monarchy. They're always trying to appeal to people who are not going to support them. But I think Australians are happy to have the King in town. It's a short visit. His program's quite light, which I think tells you that health battle is ongoing and he is perhaps not in the best health. So that to me is another reason why the premiers should actually make themselves available. This may be their only chance to greet the King in their own cities.
And imagine just missing out on this, just simply because, some lefties in Balmain might get annoyed about it. It's just so petty.